Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Zoe Hillenmeyer, Chief Marketing Officer here at Protect AI, and I am joined by Shashi with AWS. Shashi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Shashi Raina. I've been with AWS for almost 7 years now.
Wow.
I started with the startup team, and actually I'm still with startup team, which is my passion basically. And I've been gone through like my internal journey in AWS within the startup team. It has been like working with DevOps partners, like security partners, then like data partners, and now I'm focusing on AI partners, especially GenAI space. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It was fun to fly 5.5 hours and have a 3-hour sleep. But thanks to coffee and the extra caffeine I had, like I'm ready to go and have this conversation.
Perfect. Well, we're so glad you're here. Obviously, we're really excited to share our collaboration with AWS. We've been working on an integration between Protect AI's Recon product and Amazon's Bedrock product, as well as Guardian, to really help provide that end-to-end security for generative AI and more traditional AI techniques. Tell me a little bit, obviously you are the person at AWS that spends a lot of time talking with customers that are trying to use generative AI technologies. And we kind of came across each other because you guys saw a need. There was a sort of a moment in time in the market that people were starting to ask a lot of questions about generative AI security, and you saw an opportunity for partnership. So can you share a little bit with our audience and people out there looking to learn, what are those things that are driving that partnership and driving our collaboration?
Sure. I will start by saying that, as we all know, that security is job zero at AWS, right? So we take it 100%. Very seriously. And we look for partners who have a better together story with us, because we understand that AWS will not be doing everything, because we have so many services and we have a partners ecosystem just for this. And the challenge we are seeing right now in the space, as things are moving so fast, right? Like I know right now, and I was talking to a lot of people internally too, like we are so much focusing on the model itself. Right? Or this is the faster model. This is like, faster by 3 seconds or millisecond, which is great. I feel we also have to look at the composite system, which models are part of it, right? Because model by itself is not going to give people what they're, what they're looking for from enterprise perspective, right? To have a model work in enterprise situation, it has to be a lot of things have to happen, right? Security is the number one aspect. Now you can take a model, you can run it like in your POC environment, great. It will give you the results you're looking for. But what happens when you move it to a production environment, right? The number one thing you look for is security, how the model is secure, how do I set up like, the content management, how do I prevent the, prompt injection, for example, how do I make sure that the output coming from the model is actually based on my policies, compliance and everything else, right? Now this is where, we have as AWS, we have our tools already there built in, like guardrails is one of the examples.
Yep.
And what we love about Protect AI specifically is that they kind of augment to what we have. And that's why we are talking about this, because we see there's a value for our mutual customers if we are together. Like if AWS works to Protect AI, we can focus on getting the customers to at least be comfortable about the security aspect of models, right? And models are moving so fast, and it is very important for us to be on top of things. Yeah. So this is, I think, the main reason I feel like we have a good relationship.
Yeah, the velocity of model development is wild.
It is wild.
I've been in AI for over a decade, and the velocity in AI has always been wild. But in particular, right now, around like if we just double click on the Gen AI models. The velocity at which there is a new, interesting, compelling model to consider. If you are a builder, you're a developer, you're an IT executive, or you're even a business executive, that there's a new technology, a new type of model that you could consider as a resource to build your next application. There's a new one to consider almost every week at this moment, and they're all good in different ways. And so, I think one of the great things about our partnership here is, of course, AWS, security has always been fundamental. But how do we, work together to make it easier for customers to test those models against not just a security perspective, but also making sure it hits their safety, making sure it hits their trust and reputation bars as well. And I think that's a whole new landscape in generative AI, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Because these applications are much less, it's not like you set a rule once and you can assume it will work forever.
Yes.
I mean, what have you seen customers struggle with that's different for generative AI applications than maybe more traditional applications?
And you actually hit on the key area, right? The differentiation between the traditional IT security and GenAI security, right? Like traditionally we are so used to, like if you look at the evolution of security, right? From the, for being a static tool for monitoring the code injections and SQL injections, right? As you say, like those are more static targets, right? If you secure that and you test it, it's not going to, the output will not change. They will be secured, right? For most period of time, right?
Yeah.
Unless something different happens. But you can't say the same thing about the GenAI security, right? Because it's more like a dynamic thing, because we are dealing with the asset, which is GenAI, which is kind of a black box for most of us, right? How it is going to generate the answers is something which we don't control. It could be the same prompt and you could get 3 different answers, right? Now, this is the challenge, because we are now talking about dynamic content, right?
Yeah.
Now, we can't obviously have a manual process for that. We can't have someone observing and reacting to it, right? We have to kind of almost like lock it down. So basically, if you think from the workflow perspective, the way I see it is that, like when something goes into the LLM, it has to be kind of almost like validated, which is a prompt we say, right? In layman term, we talk about prompt, right? So when the prompt is going in, we need to have a way to kind of process the prompt, validate it, that it's kind of good to go, right? And then when the output comes out, the same thing happens. So both from in and out processor, we need a way to dynamically be on top of what is going in and also what is going out. I think that's the bigger challenge, which is different than what we have seen so far.
Yeah, it's one of these things, when you start to look at that surface area, I think there's a tendency, if you're not super close to machine learning and AI technologies, to be like, okay, yeah, you get different responses out of, I think most common knowledge nowadays, people understand if you're interacting with a generative AI application, you won't necessarily get exactly the same response back, based on what you put into a particular, prompt. But I think something that's maybe less obvious is that it's not only, let's call it, well-intended interactions with a machine that can go awry occasionally, and those are often the ones that go kind of viral. It's also that you can actually combine a lot of different cybersecurity attacking techniques in quite sophisticated ways using LLM and generative AI as the attacker into these systems that can compromise them. And so for companies and enterprises to feel really confident that their applications are secure, they need to be testing against that kind of library.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we call incremental security, right? Because to a point, like what you're making, right? Like it is a move or a threat in isolation may not seem so dangerous or impactful, but when you have a series of those moving to a certain direction, that's where it becomes like a bigger threat for the customers, right? Like who are using like those LLM. Now, to your point, right? Like how do we kind of understand like, that this small thing is kind of incrementally leading us for something which could potentially down the road become more dangerous or negative, have a negative impact on the branding of the company and stuff like that. That's where I think like the tool specifically in this case is Recon, right? Like we call it like red teaming. I think that's very valuable, I feel, and from my exposure to the tool and talking to people out there like from your team, it seems like it kind of caters to that exact pattern, right? Where it's like it's about an incremental threat which is being paused, and if we don't kind of eliminate the what do you call the nip the evil in the bud to say, it can create like a Frankenstein down the road almost, right? So I think that's very important to kind of understand those different patterns which are coming from GenAI space, which may not exist in the traditional security space in as such.
Yeah, and of course, as I think you alluded to, Amazon within Bedrock, you guys do quite a lot to make sure that models are secure, and then also to facilitate guardrails on applications. But I think the two areas that we found that biggest kind of creation for customer value is, on the one hand, if there's a model that you want to use that isn't already been validated by Bedrock, you can use Protect AI's Guardian product to do that model scan on the front end, which of course we've integrated in Hugging Face as well to make it super easy for developers to look and see the safety of a model. Also checked various model versions, which can sometimes be a little bit of like the underbelly of some of that risk. And then the other piece is, once you have that model, you know what model you're building off of, you obviously are going to want to use guardrails to help, make sure that application is set up to meet your safety and security protocols. But how do you test it? How do you test those guardrails to make sure that they're performing exactly as you expected? And that's where Recon comes into play and can help customers through a sort of trifecta of standard attack library, custom attacks, and then also our own agentic attacker. That those three techniques together can really help customers go to production knowing that their application has been through the ringer a little bit.
No, that's a great call. I think thanks for bringing the Bedrock aspect here, right? Because I was able to amplify what you just mentioned that. So Bedrock has two ways of exposing the models for the customers, right? One obviously is there's model in the Bedrock, Bedrock, part of the Bedrock right now, which basically means we have all the other partners like LLM providers like Cohere, Anthropic, AI21 who are actually basically giving us those models, and we have tested them. There's a vetted process. They are secure because they have gone through a process. But we also have ability to CMI, which is kind of importing the custom models, right? Now this is where we also have a process where we vet those models before we host on the Bedrock. But then obviously partners like Protect AI add that enhanced value because they also have processes to kind of augment that whole the workflows to say, right? And I think one of the technical assets we are creating around that is how do Protect AI sits on top and how it provides value in form of having something like Recon and even Guardian to help in the import process. So I think, and that's what I love about this the synergy is that we are almost feeding out of each other, right? Kind of making it so that our mutual customers can get benefit and security of having the ability to get those workloads into the production and still be comfortable with the fact that we have guardrails and we have Recon tools out there in the arsenal to be peaceful about what is going on in the workload.
Because of course red teaming and pen testing are no new thing,
exactly.
Particularly for pushing applications to production. But what is new is how to do that in a Gen AI world. So I love that. Look, we spent a lot of time talking about Bedrock, which I love. But just before we wind down, I do want to call out all this work that we've done together also applies into SageMaker or other types of frameworks that you might be using on AWS. We've a lot of documentation will sort of focus on the Bedrock integration, but all of them can be used flexibly through APIs and SDKs to work across AWS's full suite. So, Shashi, it's been a real pleasure to have you here. Before I let you go, is there anything you want to see on the horizon that you think, as people are looking out there and looking for tools, partners, that they should be looking for or looking kind of around the corner at?
I mean, this area is so dynamic. I would be, I would be taking a risk to speculate what's going to happen in the future. What I can talk about broadly is that, I think we will be reaching a point where we'll have AI securing AI, right? I think there's a lot of conversation happening around there in that area, and I feel even now that aspect is already being rolled into different products, right?
For sure.
So, so I think it's going to be one of those areas where you are almost building the plane as you fly the plane, right? So I will continue to think that there will be a lot of models coming through, right? With all the model explosion, there will be more challenges around security, and that's why we have to always be on lookout for what's the best, partner and best tool in the market to kind of help us with that. But yeah, I think we are in for exciting times, I would say. So yeah.
A decade in, it hasn't gotten any slower in my eyes. I will say, I do think, it's interesting. We talked a little before we came on camera about, the kind of weeding through the AI hype that is everywhere, has been everywhere for a while. That's not new. And I think one of the things, I've seen a lot of, in the AI security space, there's a lot of we're using AI, for security, which is different than building AI building security products for AI,
Yes.
and those are very different.
Yes, exactly.
And in my opinion, like, not to be a little bit old school AI gal in the room, but like, yeah, you should definitely be building stuff with AI. Like, we should be building products with AI under the hood. That's not a marketing campaign. Like, of course, it's what companies are using as a marketing campaign, but it doesn't help customers understand what you actually do. I do think it's table stakes at this point. I think if you're not building with some AI in the heart of your products, you're probably not building products that are future-proofed at this point.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's my hot take. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Shashi, for being here. We have a couple more pieces of content for you guys. Shashi's going to go a little deeper on the how these things come together with our amazing architect, Ari, and looking forward to any questions you have on the partnership and, yeah, continuing to work together.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.